Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Welcome to Bhakti Vaibhav class. I think after a long time I'm meeting this batch. So we are in the middle of the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And first 5 chapters are completed so far. So we'll start the 6th chapter today. So the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam begins with the episode of Priyavrata Maharaj. Swayambhu Manu goes to Priyavrata Maharaj, who was being trained under Narada Muni as a Brahmachari. So Swayambhu Manu requests Priyavrata Maharaj to take the responsibility of the kingdom. But Priyavrata Maharaj was not very much inclined. He was a bit confused whether to accept the advice or request of his father or not. So he was little in dilemma. So at that time, Lord Brahma personally comes just to get. At that time, Lord Brahma personally comes and convinces Priyavrata Maharaj to accept the responsibility of the kingdom. And after that, Priyavrata Maharaj becomes the king, and he also divides the whole Bhumandala into islands and oceans. And he rules in a very exemplary manner. And he had several sons, and 7 of his sons, he makes them as the rulers of the 7 islands of this Bhumandala. So after that, Priyavrata Maharaj retires from the kingdom and he gives all the islands to his sons. Then Priyavrata Maharaj's first son was Agnidhra. So Agnidhra marries an Apsara called Purvachitti, and later he retires from the kingdom after giving the this whole Jambudvipa to his sons to rule. So Jambudvipa has 9 Varshas. So in that Ilavrata Varsha is the middlemost Varsha and the bottommost Varsha is Bharata Varsha. And many other Varshas are there, Hari Varsha, Kimprisha Varsha. So Agnidhra gives these 9 Varshas in Ilavrata in the Jambudvipa to his 9 sons. And he retires. So Agnidra's first son was Nabhi, and he becomes the ruler of Bharatavarsha. So then Nabhi performs a sacrifice to get a son as good as the Supreme Lord. And the Lord appears in that sacrifice and he says, there is no one as good as me. I will only become your son. And then he becomes the son of Nabhi, and he is Rishabhadev. And Rishabhadev rules the Bharatavarsha in a very exemplary manner. And he also had 100 sons. And out of his 100 sons, 81 sons were they became pure Brahmanas, 81 sons. And after that, 9 sons became Navayogendras, and only 10 sons became the Kshatriyas. And the foremost of them was Bharat Maharaj. So now Bharat Maharaj story will be described from the 7th chapter. So chapter number 1 is dedicated to Priyavrata Maharaj. 2nd chapter Agnidhra. 3rd chapter Nabhi. 4, 5, 6 about Rishabhadev. 7th chapter till 14th chapter is all Bharat Maharaj and his 3 lives as King Bharat, Dear Bharat, and Jada Bharat. So today we will discuss the 6th chapter, activities of Lord Rishabhadev. So Rishabhadev gave his profound teachings to all his sons, 100 sons, and he also told them you should take Bharat as your main, as your son, as your instructor. He is very mature in devotional service. Rishabhadev just takes up the activities of an Avadhut and he gives up the kingdom. So he became a yogi, but he neglected mystic powers. So Parikshit Maharaj asked the question, why did Rishabhadev neglect the mystic powers? So the answer to this question is that Rishabhadev is teaching all of us how we have to be very careful with the mind. So he says that spiritualists, advanced spiritualists, do not put so much faith in the mind. Sometimes a hunter may capture some animals and he will not put trust on the animals. Just because the animals came under the captivity of the hunter, that does not mean that the animals will stay with him only. As soon as there is some little opportunity, the animals will run away from the hunter. Which animal would like to stay with the hunter? Similarly, a yogi or a devotee will control his mind and senses, especially the mind. And if he becomes little neglectful with this mind that has come under his control for some time, the mind will again go out of control. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, a controlled mind is the friend of a yogi, and uncontrolled mind is the enemy of a yogi. So, the mind can both be the friend and enemy. So, Rishabhadev wanted to demonstrate the true nature of a yogi who does not put faith in the mind. He says, "Na kuryat karhichit sakhyam manasi hyanavasthite yadvishrambhachirachirnam jaskanda tapa aishwaram na kuryat karhichit sakhyam." So never trust the mind, never make friendship with the mind. Manasihi anavasthite. This mind is unsteady. It's like something similar to what Krishna says, what Arjuna says in Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna says that Chanchalam hi manah Krishna pramati balabadrudham tasyaham nigraham manye vayor eva sudushkaram. So Arjuna says that it's very difficult to control the mind. I can control wind, but not the mind. So it's more difficult to control the mind than even the mind. Mind is very powerful, obstinate, fickle, restless, strong, balavad drodham, very determined to fulfill its desires. Okay. So nakuryat karhichit sakhyam, don't make any friendship with that mind. Manasihi anavasthite, mind is very unsteady and restless. Yad vishrambha chirachirnam jaskanda tapa ishwaram. Even great yogis also become distracted by seeing the mind, by the distracted mind. So Saubhari Muni is performing his tapasya underwater in Vrindavan Dham within Yamuna, but he just saw two fish mating and he became distracted. He developed a desire to enter household life and enjoy like the fish. Similarly, Lord Shiva saw Mohini Murti and he was captivated. So even great and exalted personalities like Shiva and Saubhari could get distracted, what to speak of struggling practitioners of yoga, mystic yoga. Of course, this is no reason for us to minimize the position of Lord Shiva. And Saubhari also had his background. So Saubhari Muni, he became very distracted from his yoga mainly because of his aparadh, because of his offense to Garuda. We know that. And as far as Lord Shiva is concerned, definitely Shiva's attraction to Mohini Murti is not on the level of a yogi getting distracted because of restless mind. Parvati or Sati, who is directly the wife of Lord Shiva, could not captivate the mind of Lord Shiva. So Shiva had a sincere desire to see all the incarnations of the Supreme Lord. So he went to Vaikuntha and requested Lord Madhusudana, "Oh Lord, I want to see you. I want to see your Mohini Murti form also." So, the Lord manifested Mohini Murti form. So Lord was thinking, okay, Shiva has come to me, let me have some fun with Shiva. So I want to captivate him. But the material energy personified could not do anything to Lord Shiva. So I must do something. I must manifest my internal potency, spiritual potency in front of Shiva to captivate. So he manifested Mohani Murti form and Shiva got attracted. So that's the full picture. But this pastime happened. Lord Vishnu manifested the form of Mohani Murti and made Shiva fall into a whirlpool of lust, apparently, mainly to give a message to all the yogis. What is the message? Don't be overconfident, right? Even Lord Shiva also could get attracted to the opposite gender, so you need to be very careful. So there is a intended message for sadhakas. At the same time, there is a very loving and joking affair that's happening between Supreme Lord Vishnu and his dear devotee Shiva. Okay, so we need to understand this pastime from both levels. Now we'll take the other side, the human side of this pastime. So mind is very untrustworthy. Mind is very fickle. So let's not keep so much trust in the mind. That's one thing. Next sloka. Nityam dadati kamasya chidram tam anuyerayah yoginah kritamaitrasya patyurjayeva pumschali nityam dadati kamasya. So nityam means always. This material mind constantly gives way to anarthas. Kama means lust. So nityam dadati kamasya, lust are material desires. Chidram tam anuyerayah. Yoginah kritamaityasya patyurjayeva pumschali. So yogi should not make maitri or friendship with this mind, because mind is like an unchaste wife. So unchaste wife may maintain some paramours who can harm the husband, the original husband. Similarly, this unchaste mind may cause harm to the yogi, the practitioner of some spiritual path. So what does the mind do? Mind will give way to so many anarthas. And these anarthas are like paramours. So these paramours will kill the yogi. It's because of anarthas, the yogi will just be caught up in this repeated cycle of birth and death. Okay. So in this way, the mind, the distracted mind, should not be trusted. Okay. So further, there are other explanations given. Kamo manyurmado lobha shokamoha bhayadayah karma bandhasya yanmoolah swikuryat konu tadbudhah. Kama means material desire, lust. Manyu means anger. Mada is intoxication or pride. Lobha is greed. Shoka, lamentation. Moha, illusion. Bhaya, fear. See, so many things are there. Kama, manyu, mada, lobha, shoka, moha, bhaya. Total 7. Karma bandhasya yanmoolah. All these enemies are generated from the mind, and they are the moola, the root cause of karma bandha, bondage to karma. Svi kuryat konu tat buddha. So Buddha, an intelligent person, does not accept the mind's temptation. If you give in to the temptations of the mind, that will lead to tribulations. If we can tolerate the temptations, then we can avoid tribulations. But if we give in to temptation, then there is a lot of turmoil that we have to encounter. Right? So mind gets inputs, so many inputs through the senses. So when the senses are interacting with the sense objects, the mind will get a lot of inputs. So every sense, when it interacts with the sense objects, that creates an impression in the mind. Okay, either a positive impression or a negative impression. So an impression that is very pleasant or very unpleasant. So somebody eats a nice sweet and he likes it. Okay, his tongue likes it. So the mind stores that impression. Okay, if I eat this sweet, then my tongue gets taste. I get enjoyment. So the mind, that impression is stored in the mind, and the mind keeps hankering for it, desiring for it. Eat something very bitter or something very pungent, or some mirchi you take, chili you take, then the experience is not very pleasant. Mind stores that. So mind starts hating those objects. Okay. So similar in this way, when the senses interact with the sense objects, the impressions, positive or negative impressions or experiences are stored in the mind, and the mind becomes a storehouse of attachments and aversions. Positive and negative impressions, pleasant and unpleasant experiences. So thus, mind is filled with raga and dvesha, attachments and aversions. So one needs to protect oneself from these attachments and aversions. So, if we give into that, then all these 6 enemies will bother us. So Rishabhadev wanted to demonstrate that even if a yogi may acquire some mystic powers by performing mystic yoga, one should not accept those powers, in the sense that if one has the powers, one may tend to use those powers in accomplishing some things, in accomplishing some tasks which may not be necessary, not necessary for us. So the temptation is there. Even if we don't need something, when we have money, we feel like buying something, isn't it? So you have experience of keeping some money and going to the shopping mall. So you feel like buying something although you don't need. Okay, mind is like the child already has so many toys. He feels like having more toys. He keeps pressurizing the parents. Okay, so there is temptation. Similarly, when a yogi has so many mystic powers, the yogi may be tempted to use those mystic powers for unnecessary purposes. So he became detached from the mystic powers. Okay, so and he acted like an avadhut to teach yoga, to teach all yogis how to give up body. And he started wandering like a madman. And there are some people who were mistreating him. There were people who were chastising him, passing comments on him, ridiculing him, insulting him. But Rishabhadev did not mind any of these insults. So then once he entered a forest, in the forest fire, suddenly there was some forest fire, and because of the rubbing of bamboos in that forest, and Rishabhadev gave up his body in that forest. Okay. Now, Rishabhadev has a transcendental body. It's not that Rishabhadev had to give up his body. He said, right, in his chapter, he said, Idam shariram mama durvibhavyam. This shariram, this body that I have, is not material body. It is spiritual body. Fine. Durvibhavyam. With your material eyes, you cannot conceive the spiritual form of the Lord. So, Rishabhadev's body is not material body, it is spiritual body. But externally, he disappeared from this planet in a forest fire, as if his body is burnt in the forest. Actually, because of Rishabhadev's presence in that forest, and Rishabhadev's entrance into that forest fire, all the animals in that forest were liberated. Okay, so this is how Lord Rishabhadev demonstrated to all the yogis how yogis must have that detachment. They should not be attached to anything in this world. So he gave up his body in this way, in a yogic manner. And there are some people who imitated Rishabhadev. Okay, they concocted some deviant religious systems. So instead of following the teachings of Lord Rishabhadev in the 5th chapter, what they do is they follow the external activities of Rishabhadev, like growing hair, wandering naked, like a madman. So they think that this is the sadhana for us. So they unnecessarily follow Rishabhadev or imitate Rishabhadev in an appropriate manner. They concocted some deviant religious systems. such people will fall down. But those people who follow the instructions of Rishabhadeva in the 5th chapter, like so many instructions he gave, Nayam Deho Deha Bhajam Draloke, Kashtan Kaman Arhate Bhujami. So many instructions, so we need to follow those instructions instead of imitating Rishabhadeva. Okay. So next, there were so many sages who glorified Rishabhadeva. Said that Bharatavarsha is very pious, very glorious, and people in Bharatavarsha are accustomed to glorifying the Lord. And in this Bharatavarsha, the dynasty of Priyavrata Maharaj is very pure, celebrated. Because in Priyavrata Maharaj's dynasty, the Lord appeared as Rishabhadeva. So the Lord is kind enough to appear as incarnations in the dynasties of all the children of Swayambhu. How many children did Swayambhu have? 5. Who are they? Priyavrata Maharaj, Uttanapad, 2 sons. Then Devhuti, Akuti, Prasuti, 3 daughters. Now you take these dynasties. Devhuti's dynasty. The Lord appeared as Kapiladeva. Akuti, the Lord appeared as Yagnamurti. Prasuti, in her dynasty, one of her daughters gave birth to Naranarayan rishis, Dakshina. Dharma and the lady. Naranarayan rishi appeared in the dynasty of Prasuti. Then in Uttanapad's dynasty, the Lord appeared as Prithu Maharaj. Shaktya Vaibhav, of course. Then in the dynasty of Priyavrata Maharaj, the Lord appeared as Rishabhadeva. So in this way, in all the dynasties of the 5 children of Swayambhu Manu, the Lord made his appearance. So Priyavrata Maharaj dynasty is glorified. So which yogi can follow Rishabhadeva even in mind? It's very difficult. Yogi generally performs yoga to get yogic powers, yogic perfections. It will perform Ashtanga yoga to get Ashtasiddhis many times. But no one can neglect those mystic powers, right? No one can reject them. But Rishabhadeva did that. So by hearing or speaking this pastime of Rishabhadeva, one attains pure devotional service. So now the next sloka, 17th sloka, 18th sloka, this is very rare. Krishna Bhakti is very rare. That is spoken by Sukadeva Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj. So Parikshit Maharaj becomes slightly disappointed. Oh, the Supreme Lord appeared as an incarnation in the dynasty of Priyavrata Maharaj and also in all the other dynasties of Priyavrata Maharaj's siblings. So, but the Lord did not appear in our dynasty, in our Kuru dynasty. So our dynasty is not so glorious. So Parikshit Maharaj was slightly disappointed. Then Sukadeva Goswami encouraged him saying this. Rajan Patir Gururalam Bhavatam Yadunam Daivam Priyah Kulapatihi Kochatinka Robah Astveva Manga Bhagavan Bhajatam Mukundo Muktim Dadati Karhichit Smana Bhakti Yogam Rajan Patir Gururalam Bhavatam Yadunam. O Raja, O Parikshit Maharaj. So the Lord, Supreme Lord Krishna, appeared in the dynasties of Priyavrata, Uttanapad and other sons of other children of Swayambhu Manu as partial incarnations. But that Supreme Lord Krishna personally, in his full form, he appeared as your friend, as the friend of Pandavas. Okay, Patir as your master, Guru as your teacher, Bhavatam Yaduna, Yadus and also Pandavas, both are very fortunate. Okay, Daivam as a worshipable deity, Krishna reciprocated with them. Priyaha as a dear friend, Kulapatihi as the master of this dynasty. Kocha Kinkarovaha. Sometimes he also acted as a Kinkara, a servant. So the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam also, how Lord Krishna reciprocated with the love of Pandavas is very elaborately described. It says, Saratya Parishada Sevana Sakhya Dautya Virasana Nugamana Stavana Pranama स्निग्धेषु पाण्डुषु जगत्प्रणतिं च विष्णोर्भक्तिं करोति नृपतिश्चरणारविन्दे सारथ्य पारिषद सेवन सख्य दौत्य. The Lord played so many roles in his relationship with the Pandavas, as a messenger, as a chariot driver, as an advisor, as a watchman, all because he loves the Pandavas. Pandavas are malleable to the Lord. Right? Astveva manga bhagavan bhajatam mukunto muktim dadati karhiti smana bhakti yogam. The Lord can give mukti so easily, but the Lord cannot give bhakti so easily. Okay. So giving mukti is not a big deal for him. Somebody wants mukti, hankering for liberation, okay, fine, take liberation. Bhakti is very rare. You Pandavas are very are rarest souls who received such special attention from the Lord, special reciprocation from the Lord. Darshana sparsha samlapa sayanasana bhojanaihi. Darshana, seeing the Lord. Sparsha, touching the Lord. Samlapa, conversing with Krishna. Shayana, sleeping with the Lord. Ashana, sitting with the Lord. Bhojanaihi, eating with the Lord. So like that, Pandavas had 6 loving exchanges with Krishna directly. Many of us have 6 loving exchanges with other sadhakas, but Pandavas had the experience of having 6 loving exchanges with Krishna directly. They are very special. So this is rarity of Krishna's direct interaction and direct bhakti. Other people may have had only personal, may have had association of the partial incarnations of the Lord, but you all had interaction with Krishna directly. So, with obeisances to Lord Rishabhadev, Parikshit Maharaj concludes the chapter. Now he begins the description of the activities of Rishabhadev's first son, Bharat Maharaj. 7th chapter. So Bharat Maharaj ruled Bharatavarsha in a very exemplary manner, following the footsteps of his father and grandfather. Who is the father? So the father of Bharat Maharaj was Rishabhadev. Grandfather was Nabhi. So Bharat Maharaj perfectly ruled his citizens, following the footsteps of his father and grandfather. And before Bharat Maharaj, this Bharatavarsha was called Ajanabha Varsha. But after Bharat Maharaj started ruling, it became Bharatavarsha. So Bharat Maharaj had 5 sons. Bharat Maharaj worshipped the Lord through so many sacrifices. So why would Bharat Maharaj perform so many sacrifices? What is the significance of the sacrifices conducted by Bharat Maharaj? It's a very important subject in this particular chapter. So Bharat, he performed sacrifices. Apparently they look like karmakandic activities. But Bharat Maharaj has done them, performed them in a devotional consciousness, not in material consciousness. So he has nothing to achieve from these sacrifices. He is nothing to achieve anything material from these sacrifices. So when he is offering oblations to different devatas within this sacrifice, he is meditating on the limbs of the Lord. He may say, Indraya Swaha, Chandraya Swaha, Varunaya Swaha, Suryaya Swaha. So when he says like that, he meditates on various limbs of the Lord. Surya and Chandra are the 2 eyes of Lord Vasudeva. So he is in Krishna consciousness while doing the sacrifice. Apparently karma-kandic sacrifice. But he is in Krishna consciousness. So it's the intention that matters, not exactly the activity. So Bharat Maharaj performed sacrifices in a devotional consciousness. You can go through Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur's purpose. I could do also. So, longer explanations given, but in just Bharat Maharaj performed sacrifices in a devotional spirit or the karma-kandic spirit. And apparently it is said that by performing the sacrifices, Bharat Maharaj purity increased or Bharat Maharaj became purified. No, it is by bhakti that Bharat Maharaj had a pure heart. With a pure heart, he is performing sacrifices. Not that by conducting sacrifices, Bharat Maharaj uh, became purified. Because he is already pure. With the devotee of the Lord, he is already pure. The devotee need not perform this karma-kandic sacrifices, but still, the sages, the kings in the olden days, they used to perform these sacrifices mainly because it's a non, or it's like uh, uh, it's the formality for the king to perform some sacrifices. When the king does some sacrifice, he has two intentions. Number one, pleasure of the Lord. Number two, prosperity of the citizens. The king, the Rajarshi, performs sacrifices to please the Lord. It's a process of worshipping the Lord. Yajna is a process of worshipping the Lord. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, also 5th chapter, Yajnartha karmano nyatra loko yam karma bandhana tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangaha samachara. So, anything that we do should be done as an offering to the Lord. So, to set a proper example and to respect the Vedic authority, devotee kings also may conduct some sacrifices sometimes. They intend to please the Lord by their sacrifices and they want the welfare for the citizens. Another reason given by the Acharyas is that these devotee kings, they want to protect the confidentiality of Bhakti. So Bhakti is very confidential and very exalted process. So not everyone is ready to perform pure devotional service. Some people may be on the level of karma yoga. They may want to do some sacrifices. For example, spirituality, spiritual life is to conduct some sacrifices, especially the previous years. So to set some example to them, they are not ready for Bhakti. Should they lead materialistic life? So let them gradually come to Bhakti by respecting the Vedic authority and performing some sacrifices like this. So these are various reasons. So to set example for common people to follow, Karma Yoga, for example, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, perform your duty. So he gives the example of Janaka Maharaj. Janaka Maharaj also performed his duties, prescribed duties nicely. So to set an example for common people to follow, we should perform a prescribed duty of fight. For Arjuna, Krishna says, the 3rd chapter. He also says, Yadyadacharati sreshtah tatta devetaro janah sayat pramanam kuruti lokas tadanu vartati. So whatever great people do, common people need to follow. So Bharat Maharaj also performed the sacrifices. But although Krishna gave the example of Janaka Maharaj in Bhagavad Gita, Janaka Maharaj did not do Karma Yoga. Janaka Maharaj did Bhakti Yoga only. Apparently, Janaka Maharaj did Karma Yoga to set an example for common people who are not yet ready for pure Bhakti. Okay. But what Janaka Maharaj did is Bhakti. And what Bharat Maharaj did is also Bhakti. Externally, it looks like karma, some Devata worship is there, some sacrifices are there. But the greatest sacrifice that a devotee does is worshiping Krishna. So Bharat Maharaj retired after ruling the kingdom for a long time, thousands of years. Bharat retired. Even after thousands of years, he is young only. Bharat is very young. He retired from the kingdom. So Bharat Maharaj gave up the kingdom and wives and children and the treasure and soldiers and comforts and palace treasure, just like a person gives up one stool after passing. Okay, after passing stool, nobody will look back to, nobody will get attached to that stool. Okay. Unless one has to send samples for stool test, so no one will get attached to one stool. One will go back and see. But Bharat Maharaj left all his palace comforts like that. To that degree, he was detached. So Lord Hari, out of his affection for the devotees, he becomes visible to his devotees in Kulahashram. So Bharat Maharaj retires from the kingdom and he goes to Kalahashrama and he starts performing some devotional austerities, some tapasya. So Kalahashrama is a special place. There Gandaki river flows and so many Shaligram Shilas are available at Gandaki river. So Bharat Maharaj started performing his austerities and worship at Kalahashrama. And he manifested symptoms of perfection. He worshipped Lord Narayana by chanting Rigveda, mantras from Rigveda, so in this way, Bharat Maharaj was doing his worship. Now we'll come to the 8th chapter, small chapters. In the 8th chapter, we see that Bharat, one day he was performing some Sandhyabandha on the banks of this Gandaki river. So at that time, he saw a thirsty dog that came to drink water there. Okay. And suddenly, a lion started roaring. And this pregnant deer, thirsty deer, did not completely fulfill its thirst by drinking water. So, and she was pregnant also at that time. So she became very fearful, hearing the roar of a lion. So he immediately jumped, leaped across the river, and because of her anxiety and fear and fatigue, she fell dead. Okay. And she had a miscarriage also. So the baby deer came out of the mother deer, and Bharat Maharaj saw the deer. He became very compassionate on the deer. Bharat Maharaj thought that, oh, this poor deer, the deer did not have any protector. The baby deer, lost its life. Okay. So it is my responsibility to protect this deer because the deer has taken my shelter. So Bharat Maharaj is kind of assuming things. Bharat Maharaj did not find the deer coming to him and offering obeisances and saying, "Oh, please protect me." No, it's just born. But somehow Bharat Maharaj felt that it's my responsibility to protect this deer. Because Bharat Maharaj was a great devotee of the Lord, naturally he had the compassion on suffering living entities. As he is also a king, not only devotee is Paradokta, we know that. And he is also a great king. And as a king, he has a natural propensity to protect the needy people, to protect his citizens, to protect all his praja. Praja is not necessarily human beings. Praja includes all the animals also. So Maharaj, he started contemplating that, oh, this deer is helpless, and it is my responsibility to protect this. So to that degree, what Bharat Maharaj did was Bharat Maharaj took the deer and brought the deer to the ashram. Took the deer to his ashram. And Bharat Maharaj's compassion towards the deer is appropriate, but what was inappropriate was Bharat Maharaj started neglecting his sadhana. So his affection for the deer grew beyond bounds, and he started forgetting his own sadhana. He thought that even at the cost of compromising on the spiritual practices, I must take care of this deer. That was his intention. So interestingly, we see that over the recent perspective, spiritual salvation and liberation from material bondage must be worked out with great caution. Otherwise, even little discrepancy will cause fault, like the material existence. Very clear? Not very clear. So, Bharat Maharaj became compassionate on the deer. So, showing compassion on the deer is fine, but Bharat Maharaj's compassion on the deer was on a material. It's material compassion and not spiritual compassion.
So we should be compassionate by raising others' consciousness from material platform to spiritual platform. Otherwise, uh, otherwise, if we show compassion on a material platform, that kind of compassion is not appreciated by the spiritual side. So the nature of this world is that Maya is everywhere, and Maya attacks us when we are weak. So our weakness is not necessarily lust, envy, pride, greed. Sometimes good qualities also could become our weakness. Bharat Maharaj did not have any lust, greed, envy, false ego, etc. So Maya did not attack Bharat Maharaj through these unwanted qualities or anarthas. Bharat Maharaj was conditioned to show compassion. He had this compassionate quality. So Maya tried to attack Bharat Maharaj through that compassion. Okay. So if a good quality can be used by Maya to attack a sadhaka, or to speak of bad qualities, compassion is a good quality. But misplaced compassion becomes a bad. So because Bharat did not have any lust or envy or pride, Maya took his compassion and attacked. So Bharat Maharaj's affection for the deer grew day by day. Day by day, he was thinking about the deer so much. He was constantly arranging for all the comforts of the deer. Bharat Maharaj neglected his personal sadhana and even personal comforts also to protect this so-called surrendered deer. Bharat was thinking that the deer is helpless, and the deer is forced by time, and the deer is alone. And the deer has taken my shelter, and the deer is completely dependent on me, and the deer has complete faith in me. Okay, so these are all his assumptions. This is not reality. This is just his assumption. So and Bharat Maharaj thought about himself that I am non-envious, I am selfless. I need to raise, protect, fondle, gratify this deer. Even if the deer is disturbing my spiritual life, I should not neglect the deer. Sometimes, when the deer is not visible, Bharat Maharaj would go and search for the deer. Bharat Maharaj will feel a lot of separation from the deer. So now there's a sense of self-worth, there's a sense of accomplishment when others depend on us, others take our guidance. Audio is still bad, you are not able to hear. So Bharat Maharaj was thinking that this deer is dependent on me. But actually, Bharat was dependent on the deer. Bharat was dependent on the deer's dependence on Bharat. Sometimes we become dependent on others' dependence on us. We think that we are the protectors, we are the saviors, we are the maintainers. Even in the first canto we have seen that he started lamenting. Yudhishthira Maharaj started lamenting. When Vidura, Gandhari, and Dhritarashtra left Hastinapur city. After Vidura came and enlightened Dhritarashtra, so Dhritarashtra and Gandhari left Hastinapur, right? So next day morning, Yudhishthira Maharaj realized that, oh, my uncles and aunt have left me. So he started lamenting in separation from these old elders. Narada came and told him, Yudhishthira, you are lamenting. Why are you lamenting? Because you are thinking that your uncles and aunt cannot survive without you. You are thinking that you are their maintainer and protector. Without you, how will they live? Understand? Kala karma guna dhino deho yam pancha bhautikah katham anyasti gopayet sarpagrasto yathaparam. We are all under the control of Kala, Karma, Guna. We are all under the control of Karma. Kala is time, Guna, the material modes. So, and this Dehoyam Pancha Bhautika, this material body is also there to entangle us, captivate us. So we are all already conditioned and controlled in various ways. How can we protect someone else? We are sarpagrasta. It's like somebody is being swallowed by a python. Can he extend a helping hand to others? Okay, come, I'll protect you. I'll take care of you. It's not possible, right? So, Narmani told this Yudhishthira Maharaj the same. You yourself are bound. Of course, Yudhishthira Maharaj is at a very higher plane, but apparently he is lamenting, and through Yudhishthira Maharaj, Narmani is giving all of us an important lesson. He says that don't think that we are the maintainer, we are protected. They are blind people, how can they survive? Dhritarashtra is blind and Gandhari blindfolded herself voluntarily. So how will they survive? In the forest, who will feed them? Narada decided, Ahastani sahastana apadani chadushpadam phalguni tatra mahatam jivo jivasya jiva. One jiva is naturally dependent on another jiva for its sustenance. So why should you unnecessarily think that we are the protector or savior? Don't be under that illusion. Here, Bharat also was under that illusion. Bharat is under great illusion that that I am the protector of the deer. Without me, the deer cannot survive. Okay. That's the nature of Maya. Maya makes us believe that we can save others, we can protect others. So, even at such an advanced stage, also Bharat went to Bhava stage. He was having tears of ecstasy while doing his sadhana. But even at that stage, also there are distractions. The main issue with Bharat Maharaj was he did not have any devotee association. He was practicing spiritual life alone. He did not have anyone else next to him. Someone would have told him, "Hey, he has spent so much time with the deer." Maharaj got that kind of comment or indication from other devotees, he would not have been distracted so much. Maharaj was distracted so much, mainly because nobody was there. So, Bharat Maharaj's affection for the deer increased a lot. He became so attached. Okay. So, Bharat started enjoying all the pastimes of the deer. Deer is very small, looks very sweet and cute. Bharat is doing some sacrifices. Okay. Worshipping the Lord by collecting some paraphernalia. And suddenly this deer comes and starts putting its mouth in the puja paraphernalia and contaminates the sacrificial ingredients. And Bharat would become angry. And that anger is not genuine anger. He is just actually appreciating the cute and sweet activities of the deer, but he was not really angry with the deer. So he was just thinking, oh, how sweet the deer looks when it's doing like that. So he just shows some anger in a very fake manner. And the deer will just go and sit at some place. And Bharat would look at the deer and enjoy the sweetness of the deer in Manlila. Oh, the deer becomes upset. When it chastises the deer silently sits at one place. So the deer looks so sweet. Okay. So he was enjoying. So he already, while performing his worship, he's thinking about the deer. He is deer conscious, not Krishna conscious. So that kind of distracted spiritual practices already put him in the category of distracted sadhakas. It says that we need to be very cautious in executing spiritual duties. And we need to follow the rules and regulations regularly by chanting Hare Krishna. If you neglect doing this, you will eventually fall. So now, deviation may not look very gross. You are going in certain direction. Somebody says, okay, you go in this direction, you will receive destination. You started traveling. Somewhere you take a slight deviation. Okay, let me try this path. Okay. So that 1 degree deviation or 2 degrees deviation from the original path. So that little deviation will become very heavy upon us. So initially it seems like 1 degree deviation, But if you start traveling in that direction, you will end up in another destination, not in the intended destination. Initially, it seems like very slight distraction, very innocent distraction, small tangent, but it takes you somewhere else if you work on it. Sometimes we may go like this, and after some time we realize and then we should come back on the track, because distractions are very common in sadhaka life. There is Google Map. We put a Google Map, and this is the path to your destination. Google Map shows. Somewhere you become little inattentive and took some other left turn or right. Okay. And you are working, you are traveling in the direction. And Google Map somehow adjusts in such a way that you come back on the normal track, or it shows another path to your destination. Okay, it aligns. But if that alignment facility is not there, you took that little different turn and you ended up somewhere else. Somewhere you need to go on the flyover, not down. Instead of going on flyover, you just went down and you ended up some other destination. So it becomes very difficult. So all the innocent distractions will become very heavy upon the progress of sadhaka. So deviation causes fall down even for an advanced soul, what is because struggling sadhakas. So one should not think oneself very advanced. Okay. So one more thing, sympathy or compassion should be on a spiritual plane and not on a bodily plane. If one is actually sympathetic towards humanity, one should try to help the humanity to come to spiritual consciousness, not material consciousness. So as far as material body is concerned, we can't do much for anyone. So, but if we can help people to develop some little spiritual inspiration by bringing them to spiritual consciousness, we can be a great service to them. Further, we can inspire them in spiritual life by our personal practice also. A distracted practitioner of Bhakti Yoga cannot inspire in others concentrated practice of Bhakti. We ourselves are distracted. How can we inspire others to concentrate on Bhakti Yoga? Right. Of course, Krishna may sometimes use a immature sadhaka also to inspire new people. Okay, that's Krishna's speciality. But we need to also take care of our personal sadhana nicely. Then only we will be able to help others. So, Maya is when we equate compassion to the body and compassion to the soul. Compassion to the soul and compassion to the body are different. But if we equate both, then it is Maya. Of course, sometimes when somebody becomes sick, another devotee becomes sick, so he gets fever, cold, something like that, you go and serve them, help them. Ultimately, to enable them to come back for next day's Mangalarati, next day's Japa session, okay, to do their services nicely. So now, in that sense, service to body is service to soul. So in the name of serving the soul, we should not be neglectful to the bodies of ourselves or other devotees. That's fine. But the intention has to be the spiritual. Our intention in protecting the body, caring the body of oneself or others is to practice spiritual likeness. But without that spiritual intent, just serving the material body and thinking that, oh, this is spiritual life, and that becomes Maya. So now, Prabhupada writes in the purport, in the 10th purport, the only benefit we can render to suffering beings is to try to raise them to spiritual consciousness. So basically, we need to have proper balance. So one may render service to body, one's own body or others' bodies. To what degree is it beneficial for spiritual life? So to that degree, we should take care of body. Bhakti Thakur also says we should have good health. Otherwise, how can we do sadhana? They're always constantly struggling with bad health, poor health. That will distract us from our sadhana, spiritual sadhana. Also, we need a healthy body. Even Prahalad also says, the 7th canto, 6th chapter, 5th shloka, Prahalad says, As long as the body is stout and strong, we should perform spiritual life. The body is the instrument for us to perform spiritual sadhana. So body, taking care of body is very important, as much as it is necessary for spiritual life. But overly being attached to the body and taking care of physical comforts at the cost of sadhana, distraction from sadhana, will not help us progress in spiritual life. Similarly with other bodies also. So we need to have the right kind of balance, sadhana, compassion on people. What kind of compassion we can show? So now Bharat Maharaj became so attached to the deer, and he became a deer in the next life. We will see very soon. Maybe in the next session we will see. So if Bharat Maharaj could get attracted to, could become an animal in the next life, what to speak of common people who are overly attached to animals. So, since this was the case with Bharat, what can we say about those who are not advanced in spiritual life and become attached to cats and dogs? Okay. So unless we increase faith in the Lord, we shall be attached to many other things. This is the cause of material bondage. We will discuss more about how Bharat Maharaj meditated on the deer, how he became illusion more and more. All that we will discuss in the next session, next week. So basically, this is misuse of free will. So we all have some free will, and how do we use that free will? The minute independence is very important. So Bharat Maharaj had this free will. He could use that free will to serve the Lord, to do his sadhana, or to serve the deer. And the deer did not have so much of attraction or attachment to Bharat also. Okay. Bharat Maharaj had that affection, but the deer did not have. Deer did not have the ability or intention to reciprocate with the feelings of Bharat. So Bharat is only overly attached, unduly attached. The deer was not so much attached. So better to invest our feelings and emotions in worthy relationships and not some material relations. Let's not become victims of material emotions. That's the message that we can get from Bharat's story. The story is still pending. We discussed hardly initial 7-8 verses. We'll discuss more next week. Thank you very much. So next week we can have a session, right? Holy Gaur Purnima, if devotees are busy, then we can cancel. We are cancelling the classes of the Saturday batches. Sunday batch, if you want to have, you can have. You can raise your hands if you want to have. You can have it. Any questions or comments? Vishamruta. Vishamruta. Vishantavitra.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Just I raised a hand for the class, support. That's why I raised it. Anyhow, so Bharat Maharaj is so much attached. In that case, normal sadhakas, and you told already, you commented like that. How to avoid, in the name of devotion, we also have some unnecessary attachments and others. How to avoid this, Prabhu? Can you suggest something, Prabhu?
Yeah, because we discussed that Bharat Maharaj was distracted and he could not come back. Distractions are common in sadhaka life, but we come back on track when we are in the association of devotees. Bharat did not have association of devotees. When we are with some devotees, they will help us to come back on track. They will remind us, oh, you are getting too much distracted. Okay.
Thank you.
ourselves in the Sangha of devotees.
Thank you. Thank you.
Shantavati.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. A very simple question. In one of the earlier verses, when Lord Rishabhadev was displaying his Avaduta pastimes, it said he placed stones in his mouth when he was moving about. Is there any significance to that? I found it quite interesting.
Keeping grass in mouth, that indicates humility. So Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, they placed grass in their mouths and fell at the feet of Batch-1. We have that examples. Because different physical gestures indicate different feelings. What does this mean? Purushottam Prasad.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam. This conflict of compassion, you have explained clearly, we should have compassion for the soul, not for the body. But in the case of Yudhishthira Maharaj, you explained, it's my duty to take care of my uncles and aunt, right? It's real compassion, but is it only related to the body, not to the soul? Because at the elderly age, and the Shastras also says, the children, the women and the elderly persons, he has to take care. So as for Dharma, yes, he's doing that. But in spite of that, thought process, yeah, it's me, I'm taking care, it's my duty. I have to do my duty that we have to please the Lord again. Again, Maya, how actually paying to lead us, because the doubt I got, Bharat Maharaj, we say, yes, he developed attachment for the deer, but it's because of the compassion, right? If he is like a very strong, very hard-hearted, he would have not had compassion. Then there is no room for developing attachment for the deer. So bit confused how we should be like. It cannot be like stone-hearted as well. At the same time, we should be discriminate. How to balance that?
Yeah, you just kind of answered the question itself. Basically, devotee is not hard-hearted. Devotee is paradukha. Devotee is extremely compassionate. Prahlad Maharaj went and prayed to Lord Narasimha. Seeing the pain of these conditioned souls. Maya Sukhaya Bharamut Bhato Mudha. So Prahlad Maharaj's experience of pain, seeing the conditioned soul suffering, is his compassion, right? So because of his compassion, because he's soft-hearted, noble-hearted, he's praying for them. But if the compassion is only on bodily plane, oh, they are struggling, some physical ailments, yeah, we can help people by solving their physical problems, provided if that facilitates their spiritual advancement.
Oh, okay. The intention should be spiritual goal. Okay.
Yeah, so that should have a spiritual goal. Besides, when somebody is suffering with fever, you can go and help them. So they can do their sadhana nicely. They can do their seva nicely. So serving their body becomes a spiritual activity, not a material activity. If it is to only to the body, then it is material. Any other question?
Same again, another part. Because the deer associated with Bharat Maharaj, what happened to the deer in the next life? We know Bharat Maharaj became a deer, but what happened to the deer? We have any info? No.
We don't have information, but we can safely assume that Bharat Maharaj's association must have uplifted the deer at least to some extent. Maybe he would have fed some prasad to deer, and definitely that would have been a little beneficial for the deer. Slightly, not so much, because the deer, because Bharat Maharaj's showing of compassion on the deer is not exactly on a spiritual plane, so not so much benefit may not have happened, but at least being with some devotee, at least for some brief amount of time, will be beneficial in some way or the other. To that degree, we can say that the deer is also fortunate.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
I do not see any other hands, no other questions. Okay, and I have posted the revised student handbook in the WhatsApp group, and also it's uploaded on the website. So you can go through it. It's a bit more simplified. Like previous elaborate tests that we used to do with coding shlokas.
This is just a side point, Prabhu. When this verse was quoted, you highlighted in the purport, text 18 of chapter 6, Rajan Patir Guru. I just felt that this verse was sounding so familiar, like I heard it somewhere before, and I was scratching my head to figure out where. Remember it being quoted in Nectar of Devotion, when Rupa Goswami is describing the qualities of devotional service. He uses this verse to show the rarity of devotional service on Bhava Bhakti.
Yeah, this shloka is spoken here in this context to pacify Parikshit Maharaj. But the shloka also important, it has an important message, Muktim dadati karhit smana bhakti yogam. The Lord gives mukti very easily, but not bhakti so easily. So the rarity of bhakti and the superiority of bhakti over mukti is also highlighted in the shloka. So this shloka is used in that context. Same shloka can be quoted to make multiple points. The shloka has multiple faces. Next week.